and I'm going.
You're going to go to the Supreme Court
I think
tomorrow.
so. I do believe.
And just sit there and listen.
Because I have listened to this argument for so long, and this is not about Chinese billionaires or billionaires from other countries who all of a sudden have 75 children or 59 children in one case or 10 children becoming American citizens. This was about slaves. And if you take a look, slaves, we're talking about slaves from the Civil War. And if you take a look at when it was filed, all of this legislation, all of this, everything having to do with birthright citizenship, it was at the end of the Civil War. The reason was it had to do with the babies of slaves and the protection of the babies of slaves. It didn't have to do with the protection of multi-millionaires and billionaires wanting to have their children get an American citizenship. It is the craziest thing I've ever seen. It's been so badly handled by legal people over the years. If you look at the original birthright citizenship papers, they all happened right after the Civil War. The reason was it had to do with the babies of slaves. And hopefully it's going to say, because our country is being scammed. We're getting all of these people. They're selling the rights to them. People are making a big living, getting hundreds of thousands and even millions of dollars from bringing people in and saying, congratulations, your whole family is going to be a citizen of the United States of America. That's not what it was for. It wasn't for billionaires bringing people in or family in. It was for the children of slaves. And what you really have to do, and I don't think the lawyers talk about it as much, look at when the Civil War ended and look at the date of when this was enacted.
Gary Grumbach, let me go to you, because as we heard the president take questions there, he was asked about this, these blockbuster arguments that are happening tomorrow at the Supreme Court. And interestingly, the president says he's going to go. Now, we have heard the president suggest before that he was going to go watch oral arguments. He didn't. He has been to the Supreme Court a couple times in his first term, if I remember correctly, for the sort of formal ceremonies for Justice Gorsuch, Justice Kavanaugh, obviously during his term, that first term. It would be a big deal if the president shows up to oral arguments, right, as the justices are hearing on both sides about this birthright citizenship issue that has been something that President Trump has been talking about for years. It would basically be rewriting the Constitution via sort of presidential mandate.
This would be a very big deal. And to our records here, this has never actually happened before. A president of the United States has never attended oral arguments, especially on a policy that he himself wants to see get across the line from the Supreme Court. Now, this is, of course, related to birthright citizenship, one of the president's biggest domestic policy items of this second term. Lower courts have all turned it down, have all said this is just blatantly unconstitutional. This is something that is going to be a very hot topic tomorrow. The justices, we will see how they rule. In some of the early stages of this case, it did seem like many of the justices were appearing to be against this idea, but we will see certainly what happens. But back to this judicial independence idea, the Supreme Court is supposed to be an independent body, free of politics, free of decisions related to policy, and they may be looking at, down from their seats up there at the court, the president of the United States, surrounded by no doubt security, surrounded by no doubt other members of his administration. And certainly that could perhaps make them lean one way or the other. And I think that is certainly going to be a very notable sight inside the Supreme Court tomorrow.
Gary Grumbach, Gary, thank you very much. It's going to be fascinating to watch. We should also note, too, the president may not go, right? I mean, it's possible he ends up not going at all, even though he said he will. We don't know.
He has certainly said that before. During the tariffs case, he said he was not going to be there. So that's absolutely something that we will see what happens.
Well, boy, this just got even more interesting in Washington. Gary, thanks. Let me bring in Ryan Nobles now, of course, our chief Capitol Hill correspondent. And there's a lot to this, Ryan, because the president was talking about all of this as he was signing an executive order related to mail-in voting that is complicated. It is questionable. Apparently, there were, according to our team, some folks who are sort of notable election deniers who were in the room as this was going down. Let's not lose sight of that piece of it either.
Yeah, and there was a couple of things that the president kind of said that made it obvious that he knows how difficult this is going to be to implement. The first being
explain what it is, and then the
right. Well, he basically signing an executive order that would force the United States Postal Service to only send mail-in ballots to people that have been approved as official voters, which would essentially force the federal government to create a voter roll of people that are approved by the federal government in order to vote. And then it would also involve the United States Postal Service on that level. And what the president alluded to over the course of this conversation was that he expects, basically, that there will be a judge somewhere that he described as a rogue judge that will rule that this is unconstitutional and say it can't go into effect. And there's a reason for that, because it is unconstitutional. The Constitution clearly states that elections are run by states.
Right.
Each state
right.
has
Yeah.
the
How do you
right-
square that with
Yeah, how do you square that? And so this is definitely going to be challenged in court.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have congressional approval, let alone judicial approval. And so this has a tough road ahead. And this is, again, the president waving at this idea that there's some massive problem with voter fraud across the country, of which there's just not any evidence to support that claim.
The other thing he said, and I just want to mention it because we've talked about it over the course of the last hour, which is his so-called big, beautiful ballroom that he wants to build. A judge has come down late today and said he got to pause construction. The Trump administration is appealing already. But the president, again, talked about this. I mean, he wants this ballroom to be constructed. It's an important priority for him. And as you know, because you watch his events so often, as we're seeing some renderings here, Ryan, you know, even on unrelated topics, the president still manages to sort of reference this ballroom that he wants to construct.
It does feel in many ways what he views as one of his crowning achievements, is if he's able to actually deliver on this. So one of the things he said was interesting, that it's going to have a hospital in the basement, that it's going to have a bunker and everything. These are things we didn't previously know. So this seems to be an even bigger project than we realized.
Ryan Nobles, thank you very much. Lots of developing news over the course of just the last 30 minutes. Thanks for hanging with us.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.